Again, a few reminders to be observed during our webinar session. Do not forget to change your respective Zoom name with full name / school or organization and use the official virtual background provided by the Power of Filipino Youth. Remember to keep your microphone mute at all times to avoid interrupting the speaker. Everyone is encouraged to turn off their cameras temporarily during the discussion flow to reduce distractions and technical problems. To our Zoom participants, we highly encourage you to not leave the meeting without informing our technical team members since the slots are only limited. Please be reminded that this meeting is recorded and broadcasted through the official Facebook page of the Power Filipino Youth. And by the end of the session, everyone is required to answer the post-webinar evaluation forms provided by the event organizers. This will be the primary basis for the verification of the participants' attendance and e-certificates. The technical team will be sending the forms through the chat box for both the Zoom and FB Live participants. Again, this webinar session will be recorded through FB page. So if you have friends, you may still invite them and they can get their e-certificates as long as they registered for this webinar session.
Don't forget to change your respective Zoom name.
Ayan. Empowering afternoon participants, we officially welcome you all to the first portion of the 5-week webinar series brought to you by the Power of Filipino Youth entitled Taking Care of One's Mental Health and Overall Wellness Amidst the Pandemic. I'm Kyril Tolete, your host for today's webinar session. Now, before anything else, on behalf of the whole organization, most especially the Finance and Social Services Committee of the Power Filipino Youth, who made this event possible, I would like to extend my gratitude to all the participants and organization members for being here and making time to be a part of, I might say, history, not only for the organization itself, since fun fact lang na this is the first ever webinar being organized by the Power of Filipino Youth. Ayan, this is more than just a history in the making. Kaya naman, since all of you really put your time and effort to be a part of the hashtag We Care For You in terms of raising awareness about the importance of forwarding one's mental health, most especially this trying times, wherein we really encounter a ton of challenges and hurdles, whether it may be on our pursuit of education, di ba? Na parang there are times na we feel like for compliance sake na lang itong submission ng requirements natin at nararamdaman din natin na less productive tayo in comparison with the traditional face-to-face classes. And that is so much valid since I believe mostly rito ay students din talaga. And in terms of employment as well, with the mass layoffs and issues of contractualization, most especially sa ating mga sariling kababayan inside and outside the Philippine borders. At talagang nakikita natin may kahirapan in terms of receiving rightful financial subsidies, or even just enduring the pressure of being able to cope up and survive this chaotic situation that we currently have right now. Kaya naman, napakarami na nating napagdaanan in more than a year in the middle of this health crisis, and I commend you all for being steadfast, especially not to the extent naman na we glorify much of your resiliency dahil given naman na we deserve the best service and governance in all aspects. Now, from this juncture, we also would like to take this opportunity to introduce to you what Power Filipino Youth is and its long-term goals, not only to the youth sector, nonetheless, the whole Filipino community. Ayan. The Power Filipino Youth, diba, is a newly established youth-led nonprofit organization that focuses on Filipino youth's access to learning and education. This organization also aims at affording youth with admission to education or supplementary tutoring by extending webinars, informational materials, and coordinating service-oriented projects to facilitate the youth's need of timely and adequate information. Ayan. So thank you so much for our participants, both in Zoom and FB Live participants. Ang dami na natin ngayon. Currently, we also have 140 viewers sa FB. Thank you so much. Ayan. So if you want to be a part of the continuance in empowering not just the Filipino youth, but the rest of the Filipino masses, feel free to sign up to our membership forms to be sent by the technical team in the chat box for both the Zoom and FB Live participants, as well as the official links of our social media accounts in Facebook and Instagram. Ayan, be a part of empowering the youth and the Filipino community. Now, without further ado, to officially start the webinar session, let us take a step back as we view the overall perspective of our current situation, both in the local and the global sense. On top of the consistent rise of the COVID-19 cases and ensuing lockdown schemes, many people are doubly challenged due to the worsening stigma and prejudice on handling one's mental health concerns above everything else. Despite the hurdles and challenges that we currently face amidst the worldwide health crisis, let us all be reminded that taking care of ourselves does not stop or cease from solely nourishing our physical well-being. We can never truly maximize our fullest potential in battling the pandemic if we keep on compromising the other aspects of our individual self, like the emotional and most especially our mental well-being. And for this very reason, the Power Filipino Youth proudly presents a mental health theme webinar entitled Taking Care of One's Mental Health and Overall Wellness Amidst the Pandemic as part of its 5-week webinar series in raising awareness about the importance of forwarding one's mental health amidst the COVID-19 crisis. Now, through this webinar, diba, we are hoping to provide leeway for the mental health to acquire the attention it deserves, as well as to encourage everyone, not just the Filipino people, to speak and seek for help because you are never alone and #we are here for you. Without further ado, let us commence the webinar with the singing of the Philippine National Anthem, followed by the opening prayer.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang magiliw, telas ng sinanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong bagaw, ay hinatang tula, kawin sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y matumpay na nagtitindig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pamay di magtitindig. Lumalang araw ng waraging pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang inigaya ng pagkay mga amin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo. Mga kababayan,
Now, may I call on Mr. Justin Badayos, the Social Services Director of the Power of Filipino Youth, to lead us to the opening prayer.
Let us put ourselves in the presence of God, all together, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Loving Heavenly Father, we come to you this hour asking for your blessing and help as we are gathered together. We pray for guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work with a spirit of joy and enthusiasm. Give us the desire to find ways to excel in our work, that in all things God may be glorified. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you so much for that invoking and well-spoken prayer, Mr. Justin Badayos. To formally start our webinar session, may we call on the overall event chairperson and the finance director of the Power of Filipino Youth, Ms. Nika Cabalquinto, for her opening remarks, to be followed by the introduction to the webinar guest speaker.
Hello guys, good afternoon and welcome to everyone to Power of Filipino Youth's mental health webinar entitled Taking Care of One's Mental Health and Overall Wellness Amidst the Pandemic. Starting off we would like to extend our greatest thanks to all of you today who chose to attend Power of Filipino Youth's very first project and very first webinar series. It is because of you guys that we are here, and it is because of you that pushes us to continue our legacy as an organization. As proof of our utmost gratitude, all participants here will be receiving a personal e-certificate after the webinar. And this means na even though you are not included here in the official webinar, you will still be receiving your personal e-certificate sa mga nanonood ng live. Thank you so much. So the pandemic has taken a toll on our mental health. And I believe that we are now dealing with two different contagions, the virus and negative emotions that follow. The constant viewing of the walls around us and being in the same place for a quite long time made people feel like they are living in a cage, making people feel isolated and lonely, which can increase stress and anxiety. Also, people are facing personal issues such as changes in daily lives, losing jobs leading to financial crisis or fear of getting COVID, or already having it, or maybe they were even being ostracized by their families and neighbors and friends for having COVID-19 when they didn't have it at all, which affected the mental well-being of many. Unfortunately, some people don't believe with the way mental health works, so it becomes selfishly ignored. It is often construed as something quote unquote that will pass. Pandemic induced mental health issues are important and very much real. Power of Filipino Youth reaches out to you and wishes to connect to you at a deeper level. This mental health webinar will ensure professional advice on self care and personal well being. But how, you may ask? Well, in light of this, it is finally my privilege and honor to introduce our guest speaker. She is a licensed psychologist and psychometrician leading in the expert field of psychology. Graduated cum laude from St. Louis University Baguio in both Bachelor and Master of Science. Part-time instructor at King's College of the Philippines and University of the Philippines Baguio. Founder at the 100% Attitude Project and clinical psychologist. Through Ms. Myra, we have learned that giving up is not an option, that reaching out to others is of paramount importance to connect and to be connected. Please help me welcome the one and only Ms. Myra G. Gahid to provide an array of mental health advices to ensure overall well-being. Hi, Ms. Myra.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. Nalulula pa rin ako pag narinig ko yung mga
Hello. I think our guest speaker is currently having technical difficulties. And ayan.
Ayan,
Hello.
I'm back.
Ayan. Thank you po.
Okay na ba?
Yes po, you're
Ayan.
heard.
At least alam nyo na live to, guys. No? So ito yung ito yung isa sa mga stress na nabanggit ni Nika that we experience due to the transition of actually being in a pandemic. So alam ko na marami tayong gustong matutunan tungkol sa mental health and especially how to protect our wellness during these trying times. And thank you for being here. I know that 1 hour is short to discuss everything that you'd like to know about mental health and psychology, if ever. But thank you. And I am actually checking yung comments kanina sa FB Live that we have participants from Quezon City, Tarlac, La Union, Pangasinan, Cotabato, Camarines. So shout out sa inyong lahat kung nasaan man kayo. If there are foreigners in the audience, welcome. So I will do my best to speak in English as far as you are concerned, but since this is focused on the Filipino, as part of the pandemic and as a part of our ongoing story, I would try my best to speak in both languages just to accommodate everyone. So, welcome. And I hope that you are safe. I hope that you are well. If you have water with you or beverage or food, okay lang. So, okay lang na sumabay kayo na kumain during this webinar. But I hope that you do have as well with you a pen and a paper if ever you have thoughts or insights that you learned while I will discuss the topic, and if ever may mga questions kayo that you would want to address me later, might as well take it down. So, alam ko na interesting yung topic and you might have all your concentration and focus on this webinar, but still you would have a better understanding of the said discussion if you take down notes and you can review that after this webinar or this event. So I would like to start the webinar with sharing my presentation, and I hope that you could view it clearly from your screen, whether you're using your phone or your laptop or a desktop. So I'm Myra, and I would be talking about how to take care of our mental health and overall wellness during the pandemic. So the topics that I would discuss after the short activity would be research-based updates regarding the relationship of COVID-19 and mental health. I would also share to you a few tips or suggestions from various resources about what we can do to protect our mental health for this time. And lastly, the most exciting part of every talk for me would be the question and answer. What are you curious about? So we start, and hello, go to menti.com. If you have not encountered this website, or if you have, what do you call this? An internet connection that might be quite unstable, you may opt to join via our chat or our comment section on Facebook. I would try to check them both to incorporate your answers in this discussion. So go to menti.com, use the code 2692. I just have 2 questions for you just to start this webinar going and to make it more interactive. So 26927504. I would be sharing my screen in a bit. As you can see, the first question would be kamusta. So you would have there an open-ended question, whatever you'd like to share. If you're comfortable sharing, no worries, your names are confidential in that website, so hindi niya nire-require yung pangalan nyo. So you may just answer the question as free as you'd like. So there, please go to menti.com. If you cannot access the website, you may share your answers via chat box here in Zoom or via comment section sa Facebook. Okay, so tingnan natin kung sino na ang mga nakapasok sa Menti. Aba, exciting, di ba? Not okay. Okay, stressed. Okay lang. As you can see, this is live, no? We are creating a word cloud out of this this question. Medyo bombarded. I hope that that's related to good stuff or good things. But I think it's related to your modules or your assignments. Tired. Okay. Doing great. Wow, that's a new response. Unexpected, but okay. Anxiety level is high. Overwhelmed with school. Yes. And actually, the organizers informed me that most of the participants or the people who registered for this webinar are students, but they're also adults and people in the working industry. So thank you for participating. I think I'm fine, but no. Okay. So still the bulk of the responses that we receive in the word cloud would be okay lang po and doing great, but there's also an underlying tone of the word tired. So as you can see there, the bigger the what do you call this? The words, these are the most repeated answers or responses. So anxious is becoming a runner-up as well. Okay, buhay pa. Thank you for being here. Rested after 6 months and regaining strength. So in this word cloud, we can identify that we have different experiences, and our experiences are ultimately subjective. However, despite our subjective opinions or experiences, we can still see a common thread that we have two poles in terms of how people are handling the pandemic, and this is on the positive end and the negative end. So we can see here, what do you call this? A gray area dun sa gitna, no? So thank you for participating in the first question. Now we go to the next slide. So I'll just try to check. Yeah. So the next slide is another question that is quite subjective. I would like you to think of your answers to this. Okay, so here's the next question. If you're on Menti, you can view the question right now. What did you discover about yourself during the pandemic? So although we have a lot of experiences, I'm curious about what you learned about yourself regarding this pandemic. So what did you discover about yourself during the pandemic? You may write one word. That I'm a raging feminist. Okay. Patamad ng patamad. And in a certain level or to some extent, that would be acceptable actually, no? I'm strong yet vulnerable. Okay, agitated. And I think everybody has a certain level of agitation and frustration because, as mentioned by Nika a while ago, we've been here for more than a year already. We've experienced cooped up in our walls for, yeah, more than a year already. Okay? That hindi ako madaling ma-bored. Okay, that's a good thing. Not great at multitasking, that I can cook. Okay? So, essentially, during the discussion, we identify skills and hobbies. We discover and explore that some things that we thought we couldn't do, we actually can. And some things that we thought we can do, we actually could not. Okay? Or have difficulty learning. I learned how to love myself, love myself more. That's great. I can lead, I can be patient, and definitely no man is an island. During the pandemic, everybody has seen and we have experienced, we were exposed to both the good things and the bad things of being a person. Sometimes we go to the lengths of experiencing and watching people's kindness and also people not being people. Okay, so thank you for participating in this interesting question and discussion. I hope that with these questions, you could have an idea of how our flow of topic would go. So thank you for participating. I would cancel today. I would stop, what do you call this? Voting for the answers. But I would save your responses for future reference if ever I do a research regarding that. No? So thank you for participating. I'll just cancel yung dun sa sa Menti and I'll go back to you guys. So there. Well, that would be on hold. Let's start our formal discussion by going back to the presentation. Ayan. So if you're going to try something interactive in your next group outputs or talks, you may want to check out menti.com. Nag-plug bigla, no? Unpaid po yan, pero yeah, that's a good way to get your audience to participate in a webinar or in an online platform. So just a short activity. If you have your pen or paper with you, if you have your notebook, this is a worksheet that I got from Therapist Aid 2020. I did my best to check for worksheets that are not too heavy, but can also be a point of reflection and a foundation for our discussion. So similar to what I've mentioned earlier to the organizers, try nyo rin na sumali sa activity, and if you are comfortable sharing your answers, ayan, share nyo lang sa chat or sa comment section. Okay? But if you're not comfortable, it's okay to keep your answers to yourself. Okay, so acknowledging yung mga nasa chat kanina, doing great, nakakapagod mag-aral. Okay, online classes is really difficult, both as a student and as a educator. So, ayan, ramdam ko yung pagod nyo guys. Frustrated and I miss the normal. And there has been a lot of discussions about what kind of normal would happen after the pandemic, but since it is an ongoing process, we have to deal with it one day at a time, no? So going back to the activity, if you're ready, so recognizing your stress, this is the title of the worksheet. We only have 3 steps for this, and this is the first one. So right now, as we are talking about stress or as we are talking about coping, self-care, mental wellness, how have you experienced stress lately? If you would like to identify physical symptoms of your stress, emotional symptoms, and behavioral symptoms. When we say physical, ano yung nararamdaman mo no, sa katawan mo? So whether that be headache, I'm just giving example, not saying that everybody would experience such. So headaches, muscle pain, migraine, ayan. So kung ano mang nararamdaman nyo na physical na experience. Emotional would be feeling lost, feeling sad, as you've mentioned earlier, feeling not okay. Ano yung definition ng not okay ninyo? Okay, so if you would like to be more detailed or more specific about it, do list them. And behavioral, ano yung ginagawa nyo usually? Or ano yung effect sa'yo ng stress at sa mga hindi mo naman nagagawa or naasikaso? A behavioral way to experience stress would be to sleep, okay, excessively, or to not sleep. So there are some people who work with stress by not sleeping. Some people work with stress by sleeping a lot. Okay. On another hand, some people do not eat when they're stressed. Other people overeat, no, pag stressed sila. So I'll give you a minute to list what you can. If you're comfortable sharing, you might want to share via the chat box, Zoom, or comment section sa Facebook. Okay? So banggitin ko lang yung mga meron sa FB na comments. Okay, yung kanina nakakamiss mag face-to-face classes. I also miss that as a teacher. I really do miss kwentuhan sessions with students. No? Acid reflux, okay? Back pain. Diyos ko. So shout out sa mga nagko-comment sa Facebook. Ayan. Back pain. Okay. Mas litaw atang back pain ngayon kasi mas madalas tayo nakaupo. No? So facing your laptop, facing your phone for work and for classes, wala kang masyadong movement unless you become innovative and, exercise while doing things. Pero multitasking is a difficult situation to get used to. Okay, masakit sa mata. Yes. There are also increased cases of people who go to optometrists and ophthalmologists to really get their eyes checked dahil sa exposure sa radiation and sa screen. Okay. Ayan. So, thank you for sharing yung mga nasa FB. Okay? Sa Zoom, meron ba? Ayan, marami din. Not focused and irritated. Definitely. Eye strain. Back pain, no? Ngayon, feeling natin tumatanda lang tayo dahil sa back pain, but it's really not. It's because of our activities and the change in lifestyle due to the pandemic. So, ayan. Emotionally sad. Okay, anxious. And these things have been mentioned even in the word cloud kanina. So we can see similarities, no? Yung pakiramdam na hindi lang ako yung nakaka-experience nito. Meron pa palang ibang tao na same din dun sa nararamdaman ko. So it's generally an experience that we can relate to. No? So hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na ina-isolate mo lang yung experience mo as different from other people because in one way or another, we are experiencing this collectively. So with the list that you gave me or with the things that you have mentioned, ano yung tatlo? Identify lang. Yung or tatlo or maybe what you deem as nakaka-bother or pinaka-troubling sa'yo. So I just gave you an example there, one for physical, one for emotional, and one for behavioral. It depends on your case. It might be okay ka lang sa mga physical symptoms, but you're really very concerned with the emotional aspect. Or okay ka lang sa emotional at behavioral, pero yung physical symptoms ang hindi mo kayang asikasuhin dahil sa age na rin or kaya sa mag-isa ka sa bahay. Okay? So walang sasama sa'yo sa hospital na magpa-check up or whatnot. So circle the ways that stress affects you that you find most concerning or most difficult to address. Okay? So just encircle if you'd like to share my emotional aspects. Okay. Overthinking. Ito yung mga bagay na nare-realize natin na nagagawa na pala natin dahil sa ating experiences ng pandemic. Pagod na tayong lahat, no? Fatigue. Okay. So there's a comment in Facebook related to trigger warning, suicidal thoughts. Okay. For these types of concerns, I would address this later sa Q&A. But if you'd like to take note of my email address for consultation, or if ever you are open and willing to be helped, or if you are looking for a mental health professional, I would give you a suggestion later. Baka sakaling makatulong sa inyo. Or if you know someone who is affected by this. So there. Thank you for being honest and for sharing your vulnerability with us. Okay. So if ever there are some things that you might feel triggered, I would recommend and I would suggest to stop watching this video. Balikan nyo siya kapag okay na kayo. Okay? So please inform if ever you're in Zoom and you feel triggered or if you feel, what do you call this? Triggered dun sa mga sasabihin ko or sa mga examples na ibibigay dito. Although I did my best to avoid or to redirect yung topic na yon, no? Kasi hindi yun yung focus natin. Please inform the tech support or the tech team and also sa Facebook. Tapos, banggitin nyo na lang sa akin after, no? Banggitin nila sa akin after so that we can have a debriefing just in case you really need it. So yon, just a reminder, disclaimer and trigger warning. If you feel triggered while the discussion is ongoing, stop watching the video. Okay, take a break from social media and then go back to it when you're feeling better. Okay, and then inform us please para we can have a discussion about it after the talk. Okay, the third step. So after encircling, what are the things that you can do or what are the things that you have been doing to reduce these symptoms of stress? So to give you an idea, ano yung mga hobbies ninyo? Yung mga new skills as mentioned kanina sa menti.com, no? Natutong magluto, ganyan. Natutong mag-lead, natutong mag-initiate, ayan. So ano yung mga ginagawa natin so far na kaya naman makapagpabawas ng symptoms of stress natin? Malay natin, we can have a good suggestion from the audience or kaya sa mga ibang participants na, uy, pwede palang gawin ko rin ito kasi effective sa kanya. So we might also learn from other people. From Facebook, eat, read, and watch. Okay, talk to my family. Watching anime, ayan. So maraming kumikitang anime at K-drama, Netflix. No? Although we are not advertising any program, ayan, nabanggit nila sa chat, sa Zoom, no? Netflix. So, ano pa? Music, true. Gardening, workout through walking. Avoiding social media, okay? There's what do you call this? There's a group of people who might want to avoid social media to actually cope with stress, and there are some people who might be more interested in being in social media to cope with stress. So it's not to say na one coping mechanism is better than the other. No, it depends on how it works on your case. Binge watch, okay, writing down my emotions, journaling, okay, reading books, attending series of webinars, and thank you for being here, playing with my dog. So if you would like to take note of interesting ideas from the participants, you may want to go back to the chat or if you may want to save it, no? Wag mo lang i-share yung mga names ng mga tao na nasa Zoom. Or if you'd like to check yung comment section sa Facebook so that you can get a new perspective about what you can possibly do na hindi mo pa natatry, baka sakaling maging effective rin sa'yo. And to add to that, I would also give you suggestions from researches and other articles later that you might be interested in actually employing naman in your own life and inspiring other people to do so. So baka meron kayong ma-discover, ma-explore na other coping strategies in this webinar. Wow, ang bilis ng comment section sa Facebook, no? So maraming salamat for participating. Now we go to the more formal, more technical part of the discussion where I present to you researches about the relationship of COVID-19, the pandemic, and mental health. So ano nga ba ang nangyayari sa ating mental health ngayong pandemic? 1 year na, more than 1 year na, and we don't know kung gaano pa katagal ito. But let's see where we are. In terms of research, in a wide range of research naman to, 9,565 respondents ni Gloucester, moderately mentally healthy daw ang mga respondents, no? Pero there would still be a lot of mental health difficulties in approximately 10% of the population. And that's still significant because sa 9,565, ang 10% noon, let's just say 950, no, na participants, yung affected ng mental health difficulty. Pag nilagay mo yung scale na 9,565 sa global population, imagine kung gaano kadami tao ang nakaka-experience ng mental health difficulty ngayong pandemic. So there would still be a significant direction or a significant focus to put into mental health. No, kahit na may webinar tayong ganito, hindi nagtatapos dito yung concern. It is not after this webinar that we do not feel stressed, that we can cope immediately during this pandemic. Marami pa tayong kailangan gawin at marami pa tayong taong kailangan tulungan, no, regarding mental health concerns. So in a Dutch case control cohort naman, there is a greater increase in symptoms during the COVID-19 pandemic. So yung mga tao na may mental health concerns prior to the pandemic, tumaas lalo yung symptoms nila. So imagine yung mga taong hindi pa nadadiagnose, yung mga taong hindi pa nagko-consult ng mental health professional, mas lumala in a sense yung kanilang nararamdaman ng dahil sa pandemic. So, meron talaga tayong significant problem na inaatake at kailangan solusyonan as soon as we can para hindi natin, hindi natin siya malabanan in a sense na overwhelming siya. Okay? So, dagdag pa yun sa COVID-19. In Asia naman, there is a study regarding or comparing rather respondents sa India, sa Philippines, and one province in China. So, dito nabanggit sa Southeast Asia, dito nabanggit na Philippines is one of the most affected actually ng mental health concerns during the first 9 months of 2020. So, this is March up until November, around November ng 2020. Ayan. Nakita naman natin yung rise ng mga cases ng depression, rise ng cases of anxiety, and actually suicide, no? So, dahil sa pandemic, dahil sa stressors, dahil sa changes in lifestyle, as mentioned earlier, there would be a lot of people who are affected dahil sa mental health concerns. At malaking bagay ito sa Pilipinas at sa other countries, especially third world countries, dahil malaki pa rin ang tabu, malaki pa rin ang stigma related to mental health. So, medyo it's a good thing that mental health has been put in the spotlight during this pandemic. Pero we still have a lot of things to do as mentioned. And these researches would identify that we are just in the first part or first phase of addressing yung pinaka-core na concern ni mental health. So, since lahat ng tao or most ng tao nakafocus sa COVID-19, hindi natin masasantabi yung idea na nagiging less prioritized ang mental health at siguro nagkakaroon din tayo ng ang tawag dito, yung hindi mo alam kung anong unahin to protect people regarding the virus, like physically healthy and everything, pero paano naman yung mental health natin. And in another study, this is by Wang et al., IESR scores, stress, anxiety, depression scores. So you can see here, yung mga participants nila, Vietnam, China, Iran, Malaysia, Philippines, Pakistan, and Thailand. Although hindi tayo yung highest, makikita nyo Thailand, no? Yung pinaka madami or pinakamataas yung scores rather sa iba't ibang scale or iba't ibang dimensions. Yung IESR is a shortcut of impact of event scale revised. So in this case, they focus on the pandemic. Ano yung impact ng pandemic sa personal life ng respondent? So dito, although Thailand yung pinakamataas in terms of responses sa iba't ibang scales comparing sa mga respondents, Philippines ay third. Relatively, nasa third tayo. Kung ikukumpara ninyo, yung sa stress, anxiety, tsaka sa depression. Although it is not a good thing to say na nasa third place pa rin tayo, kasi relatively significant pa rin siya. Most ng respondents na Pinoy ay stressed, anxious, at may experience na ng depression. Okay, so based on this research. Risk factors naman, they identified that people, although not all so ito ay researches lang, this may be a point of discussion or parang basis lang siya. Basehan lang siya, it doesn't say that it's total and general. So dun sa respondents nila Wang et al., people beyond 30 years old who have high education background, single and separated, they experience discrimination by other countries, and contact with people with COVID-19. So ito yung mga risk factors ng mental health concerns. Kapag ikaw daw, or according to this study, if you are older than 30 years old, you have high education background, you're either single, usually single yung most ng cases na nabasa ko or researches na nabasa ko because they're isolated. So they are far from their families or they have to work in a different place. They cannot go home dahil nga sa travel restrictions. Tapos, discrimination by other countries. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but if you just check YouTube or other platforms, no, you type discrimination ngayong pandemic, marami ng Pilipino naka-experience ng discrimination. Even reporters, news reporters, they have posted videos already online of being discriminated just because they are from Asia. So ngayon, ang konteksto ng discrimination, nadagdag pa yan no, sa mental health concern, ay dahil sa Asians daw ang nagdala ng COVID sa iba't ibang bansa. Okay? So yun yung mismong punto ng discriminatory context ng mga na na-experience ng mga Pilipino and especially Chinese. So there is a generalization that you're an Asian, so you brought COVID-19 to wherever and that's why we have the pandemic. So yun yung foundation ngayon ng mga discriminatory remarks. So just for you to know that there's something like that going on. In the Philippines, so tinarget ko rin na magpakita rin ng mga researches na nakafocus sa ating bansa. So these are the risk factors. Pag nasa Pilipinas ka, according to T et al., you're female, you're young, single, okay, estudyante, nabanggit nyo kanina, you're stressed regarding your academics. You're recently experiencing quarantine, yung 14-day quarantine, prolonged homestay, kasama yan. Reports of poor health, worry, ayan. Mas mataas ang psychological impact ng pandemic at saka levels of stress, anxiety, and depression sa iyo. Okay? So not saying that every female student would have medical or kaya mental health concerns. Hindi ganon siya ha, hindi siya ganon. Baliktad. Hindi siya ganon. So these are just risk factors. Pag sinabi natin risk factors, tumataas yung tsansa na magkakaroon ka ng greater mental health or psychological impact. Okay? So risk does not mean na automatic may sakit ka na. Risk means na mas mataas yung chance mo magkaroon ng isang sitwasyon or isang condition. Okay? So just to clarify. So in the Philippines, again, student status, nabanggit ulit. Low confidence in doctors. So hindi ka kampante sa mga doktor at sa mga medical professionals natin. Dissatisfaction with health information. Ayan, spent long, yung time na nasispend mong pagbabasa, panonood ng news regarding health information, yung worry mo na magkakaroon ng COVID yung pamilya mo or kaya people in your community, pagiging isolated dahil sa comments ng iba or uy nagka-COVID yan, may contact siya with people who has COVID, yung family member niya may COVID. So hindi lang yung COVID yung nilalabanan mo, pati yung stigma, pati discrimination, dagdag stress yon. Okay? So you might as well be mindful, meron ba akong nasabihan ng comment o kaya may na-express ba ako na hindi kind sa ibang tao during this pandemic. Okay? So not saying that that's, that you're a bad person or whatnot, but it's also a point to check na have I been kinder to people during the pandemic. So I also wanted to point out a context or a concept, pandemic fatigue. Okay? So this is a topic that has ongoing researches if you'd like to read after the webinar. But this has identified by World Health Organization already as a demotivation to follow recommended protective behaviors. So, gaya na nasabi kanina, no, ang mga tao pag nakulong sa isang place or pakiramdam natin na sa cage na tayo, hindi tayo makagalaw ng maayos, gusto natin huminga, gusto natin magpahinga, okay? Pero hindi pa nga pwede in the ways that we used to before. And sige, bahala na. Diba? Nagiging ganun na yung konteksto natin. Dahil sobrang pagpagod natin, pagod na tayo, nagiging bahala na. Okay? Kung ano na lang mangyari. And I think this is also one of the explanations. Although hindi naman siguro majority, but it can be one, what do you call this? Cause that can be seen of increased cases recently sa Pilipinas, pandemic fatigue. So dahil meron na tayong vaccine, dahil meron na tayong access sa possible na makapag-stop ng spread ng COVID-19, mas naging kampante ng mga tao. No? Kampante in a way na pagod na tayo, labas naman tayo, gumala naman na tayo. It's been a year, more than a year. So, dahil sa pagod ng mga tao, hindi na na-follow yung recommended na protective behaviors. Face mask, face shield, alcohol, pagbukas ng kamay, paglinis, and everything else, no? So, kahit na imagine nyo na lang to, isang tao na makakalimutan, di bali hindi ako nag-face shield ngayon, di bali hindi ako nag-face mask ngayon. But that's just one person in a single, let's say 1 hour, no? Imagine if most people, 100 people would think that way. I would not just wear a face mask or a face shield. Di bale 1 hour lang naman. Di bale 30 minutes lang naman. What if 1,000 people would think that way? What if 10,000 people think that way for different 30 minutes of the day? And now you can see yung possible, no, na transactions na nangyayari, yung possible na spread ng virus just because of, di bale, saglit lang naman. Yung mentality na yon. What if we think about that at different times of the day, different times of the week? So, na-expose ka sa taong nag-isip ng ganon or gumawa ng ganon, tas may contact ka sa iba, and you can see yung spread. I hope I'm making sense there. Wala lang, that was a random, reflection during this discussion. So, papaano kung kahit naisip mo lang na 10 minutes, pero yung ibang tao, ganun din yung naisip sa'yo. Dahil nga, pagod na kayong lahat sa pandemic. Okay? So, key strategies according to World Health Organization, first, we understand people. And this is where we come in. No? Kahit na estudyante ka, nag-work ka, may family ka man, of your own or wala, mag-isa mo man, o may mga kasama ka, let's understand one another. However, in understanding people, we also have to engage one another as part of the solution. Hindi pwede na nagsisisihan lang tayo. You know? It's not a blame game, sabi nga nila. It's not entirely a blame game. It should be a solution-driven game. No? So, anong pwede natin gawin? This is the problem. What can we do about it? Okay? Who are the people we have to involve in regarding to this solution? At dahil apektado tayo ng pandemic, tayo rin dapat ang makagawa ng solution. So it's not necessarily blaming, that's one, and giving the responsibility entirely to one person, a group of people, because everybody has their own role in this pandemic situation. Okay, so even I have a role, kayo rin, kahit na participant kayo in this webinar, may role kayo outside the webinar. No? Hindi okay lang, estudyante ako, wala akong gagawin. This is why groups like PFY have been built and have been organized because we can do something about it. No? So if you'd like to join advocacy such as this, sali kayo. Segue lang. So, ayan. Third, allow people to live their lives, no? Wala naman tayong nire-restrict na inhumane in a way. It is because we want to protect other people. We want to keep people safe. Yun yung ating priority. Safety and protection. So while allowing people to live their lives, extending kung anong kayang ma-extend, no? Adjust kung anong kayang ma-adjust. But we also have to still protect people from the risk of contacting COVID or getting COVID. And fourth, acknowledging and addressing the hardship people experience. Gaya na nakita natin sa word cloud kanina, may ba't iba tayo experiences. Some are more anxious, some already have experienced symptoms or characteristics of depression, some are more stressed, some are okay, they're doing great, no? But you have to address and acknowledge that not all experiences are the same. Okay? So do not compare your experience with other people kasi hindi mo alam kung ano yung mismong sitwasyon na pinagdadaanan niya. And that doesn't just go with COVID but as well as in life generally. Okay, Zoom fatigue. Ayan, isang bagong konteksto. Defined as tiredness, worry, or burnout associated with overusing virtual platforms of communication. I actually appreciate PFY for addressing this Zoom fatigue kasi if you have encountered webinars, no, or kaya discussions na maabot ng 3 hours or even more, no, 4 hours and beyond, Zoom fatigue talagang kapalit nun. So, ang ideal na setting is you contain your messages, you contain your content in a limited time na lahat ng participants buhay pa, in a way. Lahat sila gising pa, no, active pa sila. Kasi you're also protecting them from, yun nga, eye strain, migraine, and the like. So for somebody who's really dependent sa nonverbal cues, so fun fact ba yun? Actually, our communication is made up of verbal and nonverbal cues. And in our study or in an article I read, nonverbal cues contain or like make up 80 to 90% of communication. So actually, yung words na sinasabi natin, 10% lang siya. And this is what makes online classes and online transactions or events very difficult. Kasi hanggang dito lang yung nakikita mo, no? Katawan, upper part lang ng body yung napapanood mo. Well, as face-to-face, nakikita mo lahat, no? You can see yung gestures ng kamay, yung paa niya, kung kinakabahan ba siya o hindi. So, nawawala yung 80% or kulang, kumbaga, yung information na kukuha mo, mas nasistress ka to understand kung ano yung hindi nasasabi kapag ka ito lang yung exposed na part ng katawan mo. Okay? So, we really rely on nonverbal cues in terms of communication. And this is what makes online classes and online events very difficult, no? It is manageable, pero pag tumagal siya, it concludes to Zoom fatigue. So, nagiging Zoom fatigue siya. Lockdown fatigue, o diba? College students experience moderate levels of fatigue during mandatory lockdown period, especially for students 18 and below, 17 and below, yung mga toddlers, yung mga children, no? Sanay sila na may mga kalaro, ganyan, imagine niyo na lang, hindi na naiintindihan kung ano nangyayari, bakit hindi pwede lumabas. I mean, you can explain it to them, pero at the level of their capacity of understanding, hindi mo totally may explain sa mga bata kung ba't hindi sila pa lumabas, hindi pwede pumunta sa park, hindi pwedeng i-meet yung friend nila, or whatnot. So this is also called lockdown fatigue. And these lockdown fatigue is associated with lower levels of coping skills. Ngayon, may mga nakita tayong responses kanina, no, na we learn something, we enhance our talents, we enhance our hobbies, pero yung iba, nauubusan na. Hindi na nila alam kung anong pwede nilang aralin. If you look at it at that perspective, no. Although learning is endless, learning happens in a lifelong period of time, pero there would just be some breaks dapat, no. Meron tayong parang pagod ka na mag-aral ng kung ano pang bago na nandito ka lang sa loob ng bahay or nasa loob ka ng apartment or whatnot. Okay, and for healthcare professionals, I would also like to address this because it is important. Kulang ang mental health professionals sa Philippines. In a global scale, I think kulang pa rin talaga ang mental health professionals. And mental health professionals and healthcare professionals are also burnout, no? So, hindi natin pwedeng sabihin na tayo lang yung nasa-stress. We are sometimes in the receiving end. How about people na nandun sa frontline or frontliners? So it is very present and it is very important to be more understanding and to protect ourselves, to do everything that we can to help healthcare professionals. So by following protocols, by following yung mga guidelines, policies, alam ko nakakapagod, ako din gusto ko na rin maglakwat siya, mag-travel and whatnot. But by doing our part as a citizen and as a human being, in general, we are also helping other people. We are also protecting other people. So just by staying at home, siguro lumabas ka lang for really essentials, and I would discuss a portion of essentials later. So yon, as much as we can, no? We are helping our healthcare professionals by staying at home. Okay? So there, after the formal and the technical part of researches and whatnot, we now go to articles that share to us some strategies how to protect mental wellness and our health patterns. So what can we do? These are lists of tips and suggestions. So most of them might not be applicable to you. Kunin mo lang kung ano yung tingin mo kailangan mo. Okay? Yung alam mo namang hindi effective para sa'yo kasi nasubukan mo na dati, pwede mo naman sigurong wag nang kopyahin or kaya wag nang gamitin. But if you'd like to try it again, there might be something new that you'd like to explore, I encourage you to do so. So, protective factors. Kanina nabanggit natin yung risk factors. Risk factors increase the chances of you experiencing a situation. So, for example, single, separated, college student, female, risk factor daw siya ng mental health concern or kaya psychological impact ng pandemic. Protective factors naman, kabaliktaran. No? So, based on the keyword, protect. Inaalagaan ka or kaya pag meron kang protective factors or pag mas marami ang protective factors mo, ibig sabihin, less likely, okay, na ma-experience mo yung anxiousness, anxiety, depression, and all other mental health concerns. So, ito yung ibig sabihin ng protective factor. Pag marami kang protective factors, ibig sabihin, so ganito siya. Pag marami kang protective factors, ibig sabihin, mas mababa yung chance na ma-experience mo isang bagay. Baliktad pag risk factors. Pag mas marami kang risk factors, tumataas na yung chance mo na ma-experience mo yung isang bagay. Okay? So in terms of mental health naman, staying with children or more than 6 people in the same household, male gender, protective factor daw siya. Employment, nabanggit yan kanina. Financial stability is very important during the pandemic. Okay? So, confidence in doctors and highly perceived likelihood of survival. Spending less time on health information. Not saying that you should not check news or you should not check social media. It is the, ano tawag dito? Yung healthy level ng pag-check ng health information, nakakatulong siya para hindi ka maka-experience ng mental health problems. Okay? Ayan. So, just to show a few tips coping with stress, nabanggit nyo na to kanina, talking to people you trust that can help you. Okay? So, ang keyword dito, trust. Next. If you must stay at home, ayan, maintain a healthy lifestyle. So, kasama sa healthy lifestyle ang diet, sleep, exercise, social contacts. Narinig nyo na to dati, inuulit lang natin, no? Para lang ma-address or ano tawag dito, ma-solidify rather, or yun, mapagtibay ang ating coping related to stress. So, third is don't use smoking, alcohol, or other drugs to deal with your emotions. Although these are temporary highs, ayan, may mga effect po yan sa ating katawan in the long term. So as much as possible, if you could avoid using cigarettes and alcohol and other drugs to, numb the pain or kaya to lessen your pain, that would be more helpful for you. Next. So, fact check tayo, no? Gather information that will help you accurately determine kung yung mga nababasa mo ba ay totoo o hindi. Ayan, uso sa atin yung pag-retweet, pag-share, pag-comment, na hindi natin na-check kung totoo ba yung nababasa ko? Okay? I'd just like to highlight yung recent na, or yung ongoing rather, na discussion regarding a drug that is for animals na sinasabi nilang pwedeng makagamot ng COVID-19. So magkaiba po yun ha. Anti-parasitic is not necessarily antibacterial. Okay? Yun lang. Share ko lang. Tapos, coping with stress also, limit worry and agitation. Spend. So, kanina nakita natin may participant, no, na less social media. Okay? Spending your time with your family. Listening to media coverage. That can only help you. Okay? Not necessarily saying na lahat na lang ng papanoorin mo ay yung magaganda or kaya yung umiiwas ka na sa reality. It is to have a balance. Pag nararamdaman mo ng masakit na sa ulo or kaya paulit-ulit na lang yung naririnig mo, you might want to redirect your energy to another activity. Okay? And ito yung kanina, most ng mga responses natin is learning new life skills. Okay? Cooking, gardening, arts, journaling, painting, ayan. So you might discover something new about yourself by exploring as well activities that you can do. This is based on the resources that you have and the space that you have, no? So kunyari sa gardening, yung iba na discourage kasi wala silang lote or kaya wala silang enough space sa backyard nila to actually plant. You might want to check urban gardening. So merong mga topics or kaya journaling. Ayan. So, kung wala man kayong magagandang notebook, makukuha yung notebook, you might want to create your own. Okay? So, recycle draft papers or scrap papers para makagawa ng journal. So, it really depends on your level of creativity and innovation. So, some unconventional coping skills is an interesting list, no? Nakita ko by Jewel and Mills. First, fold warm towels. So, yung pakiramdam, ito, mabango yung towel na nilabhan mo, tapos maganda siya sa kamay kasi nga warm siya. So, it might be a good thing for you to do. Baka gawin natin yan ngayong weekend, no? Maglaba ng mga tuwalya or kaya kumot, tapos isampay nyo siya, tapos i-fold nyo. So, pwede yan. Bubble wrap. This is what I personally do. Even before the pandemic, I love bubble wrap. So, yung mga in-order ng mga kasama ko dito sa bahay na galing sa online shops, ayan. At sa mga safe from 4-4, ayan. Bubble wrap sa akin lang yun. Sa kanila yung product, sa akin yung bubble wrap. And then, I pop bubble wrap kapag ka-stressed ako. So, there. Write in cursive. Ayan. Baka gusto nyo gawin yan. Dahil, kailan natin last ginawang magsulat ng cursive, elementary. Dun pa lang kasi required. Pag di na required sa high school, naka-print na tayo. So, write in cursive. And that's why some people develop skills in calligraphy. Solve math problems. Ito, feeling ko, hindi masyadong marami ang interested dito. Pero malay nyo, mag-work sa inyo. Solve math problems by hand, di ba? Ang daming applications, programs ngayon, solve ng ating math problems. Kahit 1 plus 1, kina-calculator pa minsan sa mga accounting students, kung meron man. Yan, para lang maging safe, no? So, 1 plus 1 nilalagay pa sa calculator para lang maging safe. So, yan. Use voice-changing apps to repeat back your worries. So, if you feel like you have a certain problem or a certain stress, or you might want to download an app, tapos ikwento nyo lang doon, tapos pakinggan nyo lang siya in a funny tone. Yan, baka matawa na lang kayo dun sa problemang iniisip nyo. So, listen to the radio in foreign languages. You might be interested to, love new language dahil sa tunog niya or kaya sa words nila, and you might want to learn them eventually. Chop vegetables, but do this very carefully. Ayan. Especially if may elementary student dito or hindi paggamit ng knife, or if you have a knife that's not really metal, meron yung, I don't know what they call that, yung ginagamit nila for kids. Ayan. Ingat lang po pag ito yung napili nyong coping skill. So watch videos of cute animals or giggling babies. This is also fun. No? I also sometimes do this. There's something about babies laughing that make people laugh too. I don't know if that's for everybody, pero you might want to try this. So do secret random acts of kindness. Donating maybe anonymously, or being a volunteer somewhere, or chatting someone na hindi mo pa nami-meet or, having conversations online. Ang dami ng platforms dyan. Shuffle cards. Recite family recipes if you do have a well-loved family recipe, if you want to memorize it by heart and recite it. May pa-presentation tayo ng family recipes sa dinner table nyo. Yan. Use an application dahil hindi pa tayo masyadong makapunta sa salon or kaya sa spa. Ayan, try makeup or different hairstyles. Or if you'd like to actually try them on yourself, especially makeup, syempre mag-iiba ba tayo dyan? Lalo na pagka-haircut ang gusto ninyo. So yan, wash your face. So minsan nagiging routine na lang natin ang paghilamos. But if you'd like to try na may music, kanyan, may iba kang type ng routine, or that you time yourself, yan, wash your face mindfully. Plants. Yan, kausapin ng halaman. Yan. Sometimes it helps now, no? There's an article I read before that it helps to talk to plants, although they cannot respond to you, no? Plants do absorb yung emotion and ganyan. So, as well try it. As much as possible positive para maganda rin yung epekto sa halaman. So, staying safe and sane naman, manage stress at a stressful time, keep your well-being healthy, sleep, nutrition, exercise, and also relaxation. So, madalas nakakaligtaan natin yung relaxation part. So, get your feelings out, talk, journal, growth mindset, ayan. Quarantine bingo. I haven't downloaded a sample of this, but you may want to try it. So, kung meron kayong family member, mga kasama kayo sa bahay, try mag-quarantine bingo. So, gawa kayo ng mga sarili-sarili nyong cards and then agree on it. Tapos, dapat sa isang buwan, matapos nyo lahat ng yon, or however you'd like to try it. And as well as dealing with feelings of sadness, loss, and grief. So, we have to identify here that loss and grief would be subjective. This goes to may proseso na kailangan natin pagdaanan. At saka yung progress na to ay hindi siya linear, no? So, paminsan babalik ka sa dating step para lang umusad ulit. So, it's different from one person to another. So, banishing boredom, anxiety and worry, gratitude, okay? And creativity. So, as mentioned kanina, may ibang skills na try yan, pero baka pwede ko siyang gawing ganito. So, it might be different for everybody. And learning to find happiness and thrive. The keyword is find. So, if there is one thing that we can be grateful for every day, it might help us to go through this pandemic more mentally healthy. So, for teenagers, ayan, your anxiety is completely normal. Your feelings are normal for everybody who's listening. Your feelings are valid. Don't allow people to tell you na hindi totoo yung nararamdaman mo. Okay? So, find the distraction. As you can see in the picture, there are a lot of things that we can do to actually alleviate our levels of stress. Crafting popsicle sticks. Nakita ko sa FB. Okay, that's a good way to cope. Find new ways to connect with your friends. May ganun na, video call, ayan. But be very mindful of going to platforms that you're discussing or talking to strangers, okay? Yan, tendency ng mga tao na malungkot ay maghahanap din ng ibang tao malungkot para mag-sharean sila ng lungkot, no? So, ingat lang tayo sa mga platforms na ginagamit natin. So, be very mindful. Still, focus on yourself, but also protect yourself, protect your well-being, connect with your feelings. This is a time for us to understand that what we are going through is legit, no? It's real. And be kind to yourself. Kung kailangan mo ng pahinga, magpahinga. Okay? Kung kailangan, that also goes to myself, no? Kailangan magpahinga, no? Hindi laging bigay ng bigay. Okay? So, bigay, tumanggap, bigay, tumanggap. As I've mentioned in previous webinars and the things that I've learned from my mentors, you cannot give what you do not have. So if you do not have self-love, you cannot give love. If you do not have self-care, you cannot take care of another person. Okay? So mauubos ka pag ganun yung perspective mo. Pag bigay ka ng bigay, nakakalimutan yung sarili. Dapat overflow ka sa sarili mo para yung extra yung nabibigay sa iba. Okay? So, protecting your mental health, maintain a routine. Alam kong narinig nyo na to for ibang webinars. You might want to adjust your routines right now kasi isang taon na tayo. Pag hindi na siya nag-work, hanap ng ibang activity. So, take reasonable precautions pero wag maging OA. Okay? Yung pag-hoard ng alcohol, ng sanitizer, na pagdaanan na natin yan, no? So, wag natin siyang ulitin. Kung ano yung kailangan natin para meron ding mabigay sa iba, no? Para available yung resources sa iba, gawin din natin. So, let's find ways to get going. As much as possible, do not fixate on sleep. Yun na lang yung inaasikaso mo. So, sleep is a way for us to cope, pero pag nasobrahan na siya at hindi na nagagawa yung ibang activities na alagaan yung sarili mo, for example, kain, okay, ligo, ayan, what else? Your tasks, other tasks, it might be a sign of something else. Okay? So, stick to consistent meal times. Ito, kahit na madalas naka-online tayo, kailangan pa natin kumain. Okay? So, hindi excuse yan. Regular mental health treatment plan, kung meron man tayo nito, seek help from a professional, mindfulness and acceptance techniques, and naulit na rin, be kind to yourself. So, avoiding Zoom fatigue, ayan, huwag tayo mag-multitask. No? Magbigay tayo ng breaks. So, gaya nito, kung meron man tayong discussions, ganyan, meron mga activities para hindi lang consistent na nasa screen yung ating attention. Online screen or on-screen stimuli, opt-in, referring to wag gawing required as much as possible. Encourage lang natin silang sumali. And then, pag gusto nila na video off, as much as possible, video off, no? Switch to phone calls or email kung di naman ganun ka-urgent. And pagka-calls, wag nating i-default na video, especially pagka-stranger yung kausap mo. So, ito naman yung aking framework dahil nasabi ko rin na focus tayo sa essentials. So, express yourself responsibly, whether that be social media, your own notes, your journals, express lang. Socialize at your own pace. So, okay lang na una sa pagre-reply, sa pag-chat, kung nakakatulong yun sa'yo. Select information that you consume. Okay, select information you consume. If you think that that topic or that content would not help you, wag mo nang i-click. Pag title pa lang na-trigger ka na, wag mo nang basahin. Okay, basahin mo siya pag okay ka na. Or pag mas maganda yung pakiramdam mo. Usually, pag curious ka kasi ang ganda ng title, no? Tapos pag kita mo yung content, medyo mabigat. So, alis ka na dun sa website na yon. Pagpaliban mo na siya. That's protect yourself as well. Exercise. Ayan. Negotiate your goals and your tasks. So, alam natin na ang goals natin ngayon mag-a-adjust dahil sa sitwasyon. Test, treasure, and teach. So, if you have a skill that you've learned, treasure that skill and allow yourself to teach other people. Kasi baka mamaya, yung technique na natutunan mo, pwede mo rin palang ituro sa iba. And it would be a good thing for them as well. And initiate change, alternate your activities. Gaya na sabi kanina, naburyong ka na sa pagluluto ng same recipe, maghanap na ng iba, magtanim na ng ibang halaman, okay, or whatnot. Lessen unnecessary stress. Kung alam mo stress ka na, as much as possible, avoid it. But if it's really required, take it one step at a time. No? Plan. And of course, self-love and self-care. So, ito yung mga references ko. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, I'd inform the team na lang later. Ayan. So, I'm part of PsychStart, Psychological, Academic, and Art Services. We are willing to help. We are providing free consultation every last Sunday of the month, although these are slots, in terms of slots. So you might want to book an appointment or book a consultation sa aming Facebook page if you know someone who really needs and who wants help, okay? And who is open to be helped. Inform us via our Facebook page. Ayan. So ang next po namin ay next week, next Sunday, as far as my calendar goes. Ayan. And as mentioned kanina, I'm the founder of the 100% Attitude Project. We are a group that aims to include businesses to participate in the mental health movement. So, ang ginagawa po namin, nag-advertise kami ng mga businesses. So, kung meron man kayong business or kaya may friend kayo or family member na may business and you want to share your blessings to pay for the consultation and sessions of indigenous youth, Okay, dito sa Cordillera yung focus namin ngayon, but we plan to expand hopefully in a nationwide scale. Like and share niyo po ang aming advocacy, and we are open for volunteers. So baka gusto niyo pagsabayin na maging volunteer ng PFY at ng the 100% Attitude Project. If you can just volunteer for one, that's still okay. Kasama pa rin namin kayo sa ating advokasya para alagaan ang mental health. And lastly, if you'd like to listen to stuff that I say and my guests, I have a podcast sa labas ng classroom. There's more of kwentuhan sessions primarily related to psychology and mental health. So most of my guests so far are my former students. If you would like to suggest a topic or kung gusto niyo maging guest sa aking podcast, inform niyo lang din ako. So, yan, available sa Spotify, Anchor FM, Apple, and Google Podcasts. And if you'd like to contact me, kunin na ng email ko, myra.g.gahid@gmail.com. So, I'm open for questions, consultations, and collaborations. So, there. That ends my presentation. I'd return the mic to the host. Maraming salamat po sa inyo. Ayan, Kyriel, take the floor.
Ayan. Thank you so much, Ms. Myra G. Gahid, for your informative presentation regarding taking care of one's mental health and overall wellness amidst the pandemic. As we go a long way, not only educating people about the content, but also managing their own. No, grabe Miss Pat, I really appreciate yung webinar discussion for today. Dahil hindi lang na-highlight yung mismong coping mechanisms that we can do, but also yung talagang research-based information, not only in the Philippines, but also in Asia and other regions. Ayan.
Kaya nga, Miss Kai, lalo na ngayong pandemic, we have experienced a lot of problems that challenge our mental health, or as Miss Myra stated earlier, it can lead to pandemic, Zoom, or lockdown fatigue, and sometimes we forget how to properly take care of our mental health. But through Miss Myra Gahid, we are reminded that mental health is very important, as well as our physical health, that we are not alone, and even gave us helpful tips on how to deal with stress, anxiety, and other mental health issues to help also fight the impacts of COVID-19 crisis.
Ayan. Before we proceed with the next part of the webinar session, the open forum, or the question and answer portion, let us first run through some of our reminders and guidelines for the participants.
If you wish to speak during the question and answer portion, kindly click the raise your hand button and wait for the technical team to assist you.
You may also use the chat section to react, give an opinion, and questions regarding the webinar session. For our Zoom participants, you may send them directly to our event hosts through private message. For the FB Live participants, you may also send them through directly the live chat box and wait for the technical team to entertain your questions.
Please keep your comments and statements relevant and related to the assigned topic for this webinar session.
Yeah. Use appropriate words and be in proper behavior at all times. Respect the speaker by listening attentively to the question and answer portion.
And most especially, learn and enjoy this open forum session.
Ayan, to kick off po yung ating first question coming from our participant, one of our participants. If a person feels like they may have a mental illness or concern, but doesn't have enough money for professional help, especially during a pandemic, what are the other options po or suggestions would you like to give to all the people who have the same mental health concern?
Okay, so that's actually a good question. Before I answer that, shout out lang. So tanong na kayo guys, ask away. As mentioned, this is the most exciting webinar for me. So habang libre pa, magtanong na kayo. So ayan, there are a number of clinics and actually professionals who offer free services during this pandemic. You just have to check yung reliability ng professional na what you call this na access ninyo. So there are mental health groups on Facebook. Marami na sila actually ngayon sa during this pandemic. Pero one that I can suggest is Mental Health by Kylie Resosa na group. They are very helpful in addressing yung ganitong concern. kung sa amin man, meron kaming free consultation every last Sunday of the month, meron yung mga iba na nagbibigay ng free consultation and then may discount for the next session. So, iba-iba siya, depende sa clinic. So, kung sakaling wala pa talagang financial resources and we understand the difficulty, especially dahil maraming kliyente ang ganyan ng experience, no? Join muna kayo ng group. So I suggest you join reputable and groups that make you feel comfortable and that make you feel safe, no? So yung mga safe spaces online, there are also some groups who offer what do you call this? Support. Anong tawag doon? Support session. So para siyang group na ganito, kwentuhan lang siya, but they are not really mental health professionals. So they may be trained sa PFA or kaya psychological first aid. Pero kapag beyond na nung capacity nila, magre-refer sila sa mental health professional. So, pwedeng ganon. Join support groups, inquire these support groups. You may also want to try meetups, ganyan. So, meron din akong isang volunteer group na part ako ngayon. If you'd like to check, Keep Going Baguio. We also do virtual meetups every Sunday. So, ang process ng virtual meetups namin, so online siya, no? So Zoom siya, hindi siya recorded or anything, kwentuhan lang siya. Facilitated siya by either a registered guidance counselor or registered psychologist. But this is just for Keep Going Baguio. There may be some groups na ibang process, pero if you'd like to check, inform ko na lang din sina Yuri later. So I hope I answered that.
Ayan, thank you po. Ayan, sa mga Zoom and FB Live participants, take note of the groups, no, for safe spaces and also for our professional help. Kasi sobrang important talaga na there's a balance between talking lang with our safe spaces, like say for instance our friends, and also seeking professional help kasi we also need that. Ayan, for our next question, Miss Pat.
For the next question po, what do you do if someone confesses to you that he or she is under depression?
Okay, so thank you for that question. What will you do if someone expresses that he or she has, tama ba? Has depression?
Yes.
Okay. So, two general scenarios dyan. First is, diagnosed na siya. Nag-self-diagnose siya. Okay? So, I would just address yung second muna. As much as possible, to everyone who's listening here, if you can also share this message to your friends and to your family, please do not self-diagnose. I know that there's a plethora of references and online material that can say, quote-unquote, that you will have depression. Okay? So, may mga tests. Nakita naman natin yung results last year nung kumalat ng mga, ng DAS results, yung depression, anxiety, and stress scale na, uy, depressed ako, uy, may anxiety ako, uy, ganito. So, please do not self-diagnose as long as hindi pa siya nabibigyan ng diagnosis, wag muna natin siyang gawing ganon. Okay? So, bigay na natin yan sa mental health professionals na work or responsibility nila. So, that's the second. If you think that they are self-diagnosing, you may want to offer your help to refer them to a mental health professional. That's why always kapag hindi nyo kaya yung concern, pag hindi nyo gama yung topic, okay, huwag tayo magmagaling. Kasi we might do more harm than actually good. And this goes out even to psych professionals, psych students here, no? Kahit na natutunan na natin siya sa school, there is still a level of professionalism and etiquette and ethics that you have to work with kapag may ganito na. So hindi, shout out din, hindi dahil psych student yung ating kausap, ibig sabihin kaya niya na tayong i-diagnose at pwede na tayong i-diagnose nung estudyante na to. So wag natin silang i-pressure na ganun yung role nila. Second, highlight din, hindi dahil psych student sila, hindi na sila stressed. Okay? Hindi dahil psych student, hindi na sila nakaka-experience ng anxiety or depression. So, walang mental health does not excuse anyone. So first, if you're not confident about what you can do for that person, refer to a mental health professional. Second, if you do not know how to converse with them, imagine conversing with yourself. Okay? So, treat this person as your friend. Paano matratuhin yung friend mo? I-ignore mo ba siya? Sin zone mo lang ba siya? So how do you want to be treated as a friend? Ganun din ang trato mo sa kanya. These people who share, it takes a lot of courage, believe me. I've also been there, no, professionally and personally. So it takes a lot of courage to say to someone, I need help. That's one. It takes courage to say to someone na ganito yung nararamdaman ko. Expressing your real emotions na negative ay mahirap na. So dagdagan natin ng pagiging rejected, pagiging sin zone. So imagine niyo na lang, no, yung emotions na nararamdaman ng tao. So if you think that you cannot help that person in the way that you believe is valid or whatnot, kausapin niyo siya bilang kaibigan. So sometimes, ito yung possible na response ninyo. Anong kailangan mong gawin ngayon? Anong pwede kong maitulong sa'yo? That's a better answer than, hindi okay lang yan, magiging okay din yan, no? It will pass. Please do not say that. No? It's better to say, anong pwede natin gawin ngayon? Paano kita matutulungan? Gusto mo ba, ito yung lagi kong sinasabi rin for the previous webinars, gusto mo ba ng advice? Or gusto mo na makikinig? No, asking that question. Gusto mo ba ng advice? Or gusto mo ba ng makikinig? Kasi kung makikinig ka lang, alam mo yung role mo is tanggap lang. Pag bibigay ka ng advice, alam mo yung role mo is tagabigay ng advice. But do it responsibly. Okay? So, kapag sinabi sa'yo na makinig ka lang, makinig ka lang. Okay? However, disclaimer lang din, kapag ka may sinasabi na siyang medyo nakaka-harm na sa kanya or sa ibang tao, refer agad sa professional. Na pag sinabi niyang trigger warning, pag sinabi niyang gusto kong saktan yung sarili ko, yan. Ang sabihin niyo lagi, ang priority natin ang safety mo. So, kailangan ko ng kausapin kung sino man ang pwedeng kausapin para tulungan kang maging safe. Okay? So, yun yung lagi nating priority. Safety ng ibang tao. So, kahit sabihin pa nila, wag mong sabihin sa iba, ganyan. Ang priority natin is safe siya. Okay? So, whether they feel like it's you losing their trust or whatnot, our priority is their safety. Explain it to them. Bakit kailangan nila maging safe? Kasi you care for them, kasi mahal nyo sila, kasi ayaw nyo silang masaktan. Yan. So, yun. Hopefully, I answer that. Ang dami kong, ang dami kong segue, pero ang laki kasi nung cover ng topic. So, ayun. I'm willing to extend for the Q&A, so ask away unless may time pa rin to sa organizers. So Pat and Kyril.
Yes po. Ayan, thank you so much po. Ayan, do not self-diagnose kasi it's very sensitive conversation with regards to mental health na rin. Ito po for next question from our Facebook Live. I have a friend here na I think is experiencing depression. Ano po kayang pwedeng maibigay na tulong sa kanya? Minsan, she keeps on showing a picture of knife and telling me na tatapusin niya yung buhay niya. I want to help her, pero hindi ko po alam kung paano.
Okay, thank you. So that actually borders sa discussion natin kanina or sa answer ko kanina. If there is already yung mga ganun, no, drawings, letters, or pasaring, kahit joke pa yan, take it seriously. Even if sinabi niya na, paano kaya pagka, wala na ako? Trigger warning, no? Paano pag wala na ako? Kahit pa joke niyang sinabi yan, let's take it seriously because we do not really know kung ano nangyayari sa isip ng tao. So pag may ganun na may pictures na mention to that friend or mention to that person that I cannot help you beyond what I can do, okay? Or kaya hindi yung skills na meron ako para tulungan ka. Gusto mo bang lumapit tayo? Okay, ang keyword is tayo. Hindi lumapit ka. Okay? Makita mo yung difference. Gusto mo bang lumapit sa mental health professional versus gusto mo bang lumapit tayo sa mental health professional? In that sense of tayo, mas ma-feel niya na, uy, may kasama ako. Okay? So, medyo mag-lean back. Pwede akong sumandal sa kanya. Compared to, lumapit sa mental health professional, it's like pushing someone to go for a solution na hindi pa siya komportable. Pero pag sinabi mong tayo, okay, so pwede niya akong samahan. Pag sinabi niyang, okay, anong suggestion mo? Okay? Or paano natin gagawin yon? May kilala ako or kaya pwede tayo mag-search ng ng mental health professional tapos magpa-consult tayo. Okay? So pwedeng ganon. Kung sakaling hindi siya open, keep the conversation going. Okay? So, make sure that bukas, mag-usap pa rin kayo. The following day, mag-usap pa rin kayo. So, the conversation would go like this. Okay, so bakit mo naiisip yan? Anong nangyari at naisip mo yan? Tapos, yung next na, sige, hayaan mo lang siya magsalita, and then, usap ulit tayo bukas ha. Okay? There is a continuation. Para meron siyang level of commitment na okay, may nag-aantay pala sa akin. May nag-aantay na may sabihin ako. And then, kamustahin mo siya. Do not pressure the person to consult pag hindi pa siya ready. Okay? So, medyo rin sa amin yun. Hindi maging effective ang therapy or ang consultation kung hindi pa ready yung kliyente. Okay? So, make sure na they do it on their own will. Okay? Or kagustuhan nila compared sa force. So, keep the conversation going. And then kung kaya mo na makicommunicate sa isang mental health professional while you're conversing so that you have a guidance in terms of how the process goes or anong pwedeng sabihin na hindi siya matitrigger lalo, that would be the best. So that's 3 things. First is keep the conversation going. Second, samahan niyo siyang mag-refer. And third, do both. Okay? You refer to a mental health professional while keeping the conversation going. So I hope that made sense.
Ayan, thank you so much po. Kasi tama po, kasi there's a huge difference between pushing a person na mag-seek ng help na individually, at the same time, nasasamahan mo talaga siya so that, ayun, alam mo yun, na buboost din yung confidence niya mismo and alam niya na meron siyang kasama, di ba? That, ayun, #we are here for you talaga.
True.
Ayan po. Next question naman po, what insight or help may you give for someone who is losing motivation and tiwala sa sarili?
Motivation and tiwala sa sarili is a lifelong process. Actually, even if kahit na mental health professional kami, we also have those moments, no, na nawawalan ng motivation, ayaw gawin yung mga bagay-bagay. The kindest thing that I do, that's a personal experience, no? Kapag nangyayari to, I affirm myself. I identify one trait that I know I have, and then that's what I tell myself. So for example, kahapon sobrang nagkwento Kahapon sobrang wala talaga ako sa mood gumawa ng work and whatnot. So I told myself, it's okay to rest. Kasi one day lang yon, kasi holiday naman kahapon. So one day lang yun sa 7 days. Okay lang magpahinga. Diba? So, ayun. For me, I think you should, or I suggest, you think of a trait that you have. For example, di ba, maganda naman ako. Mga ganun ba? Or kaya, may ipon naman ako. Or kaya may pamilya naman ako na uuwian. Or kaya, may love life naman ako. Di ba? You assure yourself of one thing that you have and that you are grateful for to keep you going. And then essentially, pag nahanap mo ng isa, pero meron din si ganito. Meron din ganito. Magiging trend na siya. So, kunyari na-identify mo, okay lang magpahinga once a week. May trabaho pala ako. Thankful ako may trabaho ako. Tapos, dahil may trabaho ko, may sweldo ako. Yung mga ganun. So, it becomes a chain reaction already. From one positive trait about yourself, it becomes continuous. I hope that helps. Yan.
Okay, ayun po. For our next question po from our Facebook Live, when do we know if someone needs to be diagnosed and guided by the professional?
When do we know when someone is diagnosed? 2 perspectives. If that someone is you, the mere point that you're asking about it might be a concern already, no? Kasi usually sa ating konteksto ng mga Pilipino, tabu pa rin ang actually, yung pag nasabi mo na, nag-consult ako sa psychologist, hala, baliw ka ba? Diba? Usually, ganun yung response eh. It's not a case, no? That's for a different webinar, pero just saying it. So, if that someone is you, pagka medyo bothered ka na sa mga stressors mo, yung point na naghahanap ka na ng kakausapin or kaya hindi mo na alam gagawin mo, it might be a good option to seek professional help. Pero in the context of mental health, actually, hindi ka na stress, gusto mo lang ng may kausap, pwede nyo kaming kausapin, pwede nyo kaming lapitan. Pero sa konteksto ng pagtanggal, actually yun yung binabanggit pa natin na if people are too stressed, if people are hindi na nila alam gagawin nila sa buhay nila, yan, dun tayo papasok. Pero in the sense of what we do, you can approach us regarding anything. Gusto mo lang ng kausap, kakwentuhan. So, yon. If for other people naman, how do we know if someone needs? Yan. We can easily identify when someone needs help. However, gaya na nasabi ko kanina, it's still the person's decision kung gustuhin niyang matulungan siya. Gaya na nasabi natin, no? Kung gusto, may paraan. Kung ayaw, may dahilan. That's the same way with consultations. Kung gusto ng tao, nagawa niya ng paraan. No? Lalapit siya sa isang friend niya na pwedeng tumulong sa kanya. Kung ayaw niya, marami siyang pwedeng sabihin. Marami siyang pwedeng gawing iwas. No? So we do not force any decision onto someone. However, we very much encourage that safety and protection is still our priority. So pag nakikita na natin na medyo hindi na maganda yung nangyayari dahil sinasaktan na niya yung sarili niya or ibang tao, pwede tayo dun mag-intervene. Politely. So, yon.
Ayun. Thank you so much po.
Sure.
Another question from our Facebook Live. Sabi po, hello po. How to help person who is currently experiencing PSTD or post-traumatic stress disorder?
Okay. PTSD is something, it's a very complicated diagnosis actually. Kung sa perspective ng hindi psych or ng non-psych professional, support. We can be there as a support for that person. Kasi may lalim at matagal at relatively matindi yung proseso ng therapy na kailangan kung PTSD yung topic natin. For people sa audience, no, post-traumatic stress disorder is brought about based on the word trauma. So, hindi lang siya after a few sessions, okay na. Usually it takes years, no? So, being a good support system for the person. Anong kailangan niya? If the person needs space to not talk about it dahil hindi pa siya ready pagkwentuhan, huwag mo siyang ipilit. Kung gusto na niyang pag-usapan at yun lagi usapan ninyo, kung okay ka doon, that's a good social support system. Pero pagka medyo nagsawa ka na, you might want to address to the person politely. So be a friend. I guess for topics or for questions that ask papaano ako magiging kaibigan, imagine yourself situation. Papaano ko gustong tatuhin ng mga tao pag ako'y nandun? To deal with other people. Yeah.
Thank you po for that, Miss Myra. So to all the
Sure.
people who are experiencing PTSD or if you know someone, be there for them and support them. So for the next question po, how can you help po someone na you know po na he really needs help pero continue po niya na pinupush away yung help and those who are really concerned about him?
Okay. Pushing people away is actually a type of mechanism. For that person, it might seem like coping, pero from an outsider, it's a defense mechanism. So that's another topic for a webinar, pero I'm just saying, for that person, para sa kanya tingin niya coping mechanism yon. Para sa mga tao nasa labas ng problema, it's a defense mechanism. So what we can do is to allow the person yung space na kailangan niya. So pag ayaw niyang pag-usapan yung usapan, but express ninyo na andito lang ako para tulungan ka. You need someone to talk to, I'm here. When you say that, yung sentence na yon, if you need someone to talk to, I'm here, be very mindful na dapat ikaw ready ka din. Kasi kung hindi mo sure kung ano yung pinagdadaanan niya and binitawan mo yung sentence na yon, nagbigay ka na ng sense of responsibility. Okay? So just as I mentioned in previous webinars, itanong mo yung kamusta kung ready ka sa sagot. Okay? Usually sa Pilipino, tanong tayo ng tanong, kamusta ka? Ganyan. Tapos magugulat ka na lang, nag-MMK na siya sa'yo. Tapos sasabihin mo, ang drama-drama niya, ate-ate niya, no? But you ask the question. So be very mindful. Pag hindi ka ready dun sa sagot, huwag mong itatanong. Okay? Pag hindi ka ready makatanggap ng MMK na reply, huwag mo itatanong. Find something to say that, would not open that conversation kung hindi ka ready. So, might as well dun sa friend kanina, kung pinupush ka niya away, sabihin mo sa kanya, I'm here for you. Ito yung mga pwede kong mabigay sa'yo. Conversation. What else? Enumerate na sa kanya kung anong pwede niyo mabigay. And make sure that you push through. Kasi there are some people who, might say, I'm here for you, pero pag nandyan na yung conversation, iiwas or aalis. Okay? It might cause more stress kapag ka ganun. Tapos imagine nyo sa 10 friends or sa acquaintances na chinat niya, walang nag-reply, no? It takes really courage to say something. So, pag kanilapitan na kayo, am I ready for this? Pag hindi ako ready, anong pwede kong gawin? Refer or kaya offer what you can. Okay, sabihin ninyo, hindi ako ready sa conversation na to, pero alam mo na I care for you, anong pwede natin gawin? Okay? So, offer an alternative. Huwag mong isa-shut off yung tao. Okay? Kasi lalo siyang pupunta sa shell niya, mahirapan pa tayo. Yun.
Ayun. Thank you so much po. Talaga yung words of affirmation is a huge contribution na rin talaga. Since there are times na confused tayo, tama ba itong binibigay kong advice or not, 'di ba? Syempre, yun din yung mabibigay natin. It's the least thing we can do then. And for our next question po, when do we know that a person is experiencing depression or nagiging maarte lang? Is there such thing na kaartehan lang?
Okay. Sige. Pwede ba next topic ng webinar natin to, kaatehan o hindi? So, ayan. As mentioned earlier, feelings and all feelings in the world are valid. Kung nararamdaman mo man yan, sa'yo yan, totoo yan. Okay? So, gaslighting, ibang usapan yan. Pero we do not do that here. Whether you feel sad or you feel lonely, then you're sad and you're lonely. Okay? So, walang pwede magsabi na, hindi, ano ka ba? Hindi yan totoo, no? Isipin mo lang yung magandang bagay. That's not true. So, depression is definitely not kaartehan. It's actually more intriguing to identify anong meron sa depression compared sa kung pinuprove mo kung totoo yun na hindi. Okay? So, depression, for people who still do not believe in depression and the existence of mental health conditions, these are all true. And if you'd like to have a conversation on the scientific basis of depression and concerns, we can talk about that in another platform. Ayun.
Thank you po for that. So, since lalo na po ngayon, pandemic, nagkakaroon po tayo ng confusion on what is depression talaga. So, dapat wag niyo po invalid yung ating feeling. So, for the next question po is, I have a friend na may pinagdadaanan sa bahay nila. May suicidal thoughts na po siya at gusto niyang lumaya sa bahay nila. Minor po siya. Kaso, hindi open yung father niya for consulting a mental health expert. What are we going to do daw po?
Okay, so this makes the dynamic more complicated, no? Because of first, minor siya. So, kailangan lagi ng consent kapag may what do you call this? May usapan na ganito. So, kung hindi man open yung father or yung parent, pwedeng isama actually yung mental health professional dun sa conversation. So, usually, kung sakaling kailangan at gusto na nung bata na mag-seek ng help, usually dinadaan yan sa guidance counselor. So, lalo na pag-enrolled yung student, may service naman yung school, which I hope so na meron, no? Pwedeng idaan sa guidance counselor. And then, if the guidance counselor would initiate a conversation, tapos papasok si mental health professional to explain ano nga ba yung nangyayari, ano yung possible na solution, anong pwede natin gawin, that might be a good suggestion. So, kung pwede natin idaan sa guidance office, ayan, refer natin sa guidance office yung concern, and then kausapin natin yung guidance office regarding how to communicate with the parents. Considering that these are minors. Kapag hindi minor yung friend naman natin, it's a different conversation. Kasi pwede na natin i-direct na isali si mental health professional. But for now, for minors, we pass or we go through yung sa guidance office nila. So, yun yung ma-suggest ko for this time.
And thank you so much po for our last question.
Sure.
For children bullied in school, what is the possible treatment to erase those traumatic experiences in their mind?
Okay, for that's complicated because it's not just the bullying incidents that you're targeting. If it is through therapy, pwede, no, yung sa experiences ng bata. Pero if you're in the social support group or in the social circle of the child, you also have to address the systems. When I say systems, dapat included ang school, included ang administration, included yung mga bata na involved, and a lot more. So it's a complex matter. But in terms of the child erasing, quote unquote, yung experiences, it's not really erasing. It's more of processing the emotions attached to the situation and how it affected the child. So, pwede natin yung simulan sa pag-introduce na may konsepto ng friends or konsepto ng social circles na pwede siyang maging safe. Introducing that circle to them. Kasi siguro ang na-experience ng batang to would be more of yung harmful or unsafe space. So, pwede tayong mag-introduce ng alternatives na safe spaces. So, online especially. So, check websites or we can check groups na pwede siyang mag-share ng hobbies niya, ng conversations ng walang judgment, na anonymously kung mas confident yung bata doon, but supervised by the parents or the guardians. So, hindi natin pwedeng isalang, no, yung mga minors, yung mga estudyante, yung mga bata sa platforms na walang supervision. So, that goes as well with parents here, mga kuya, tita at tito. So, kailangan lagi tayong may supervision. So, gaya na nakita ko kayo na sa chat, I'm not so sure kung chat yun or sa FB, exposure of students and children to gadgets are, tumaas talaga ngayong pandemic. That goes to show and that shows na dapat yung responsibility ng guardians to actually supervise our children sa mga pinupuntahan din ng websites at groups ay tumaas din. So, dahil mataas ang exposure nila, mataas din ang responsibilidad nating matatanda. So, hindi yan kasalanan nung platform mismo because it's just a tool. It's the people behind that platform, that tool. So, supervision and introducing safe spaces, alternative safe spaces. Yeah.
Ayan. Okay, that ends po our question and answer portion. To all the participants, should you have questions that are not tackled during the open forum discussion, we will still be sending this queries to our guest speaker, Ms. Myra Gahid, so that she would be able to respond to it if her time and schedule permits. Ayan. Tinatrack din siya ng ating technical team. And once again, thank you so much po for participating in the open forum portion of today's webinar session. Now, to give the token of appreciation and acknowledgement to our webinar guest speaker, Ms. Myra G. Gahid, may we call on the overall event chairperson and finance director, the Power of Filipino Youth, Ms. Nika Cabalquinto.
Ayan, hello. Sorry, hindi ako nakapag-on cam. Unfortunately, my internet is unstable. But this certificate will be given to Miss Myra G. Gahid as a token of appreciation for her insightful presentation regarding mental health webinar. Also, in grateful acknowledgement of her distinguished and invaluable service rendered as a guest speaker on the webinar entitled Taking Care of One's Mental Health and Overall Wellness Amidst the Pandemic, the very first webinar of the 5-week webinar series project conducted by the Power of Filipino Youth, thereby contributing immeasurably to the prestige and success of the initiative. signed by the President of the organization, Erel Yuri D. Edulian, Vice President External Jewel V. Elefane, Vice President Internal Lynette Rebellion, and the chairperson of the event, Nicole Katrina Cabalquinto. Thank you so much, Miss Myra G. Gahid. Thank you, ma'am.
Maraming salamat. Salamat sa inyong lahat.
Ayan. Thank you so much po again, Miss Myra G. Gahid, for imparting your knowledge to us with regards to handling one's mental health amidst the pandemic. Ayan, ramdam na ramdam talaga natin na yung hashtag we are here for you na nagsistart talaga in a conversation and just talking with our friends, no? At least may supervision pa rin talaga aside from the professional help and also seeking for safe spaces. Kaya naman, let's additionally support our guest speakers project, diba, entitled the 100% Attitude Project by following their social media accounts through the links which will be sent by the technical team on our both Zoom and FB Live chat box. Syempre, learning and empowering never stops from this webinar session dahil simula pa lang ito out of our 5-week webinar session under the Power of Filipino Youth. Kaya naman, let us give this floor to the organization's membership director and event chairperson, Mr. David Cabaltera, to give us and promote our next webinar session next weekend.
Thank you, Ms. Tolete. Good afternoon, everyone. I am David Nathan Cabaltera, the membership director of Power of the Filipino Youth. We highly encourage you to join us in talking about the art of transformational leadership amid the pandemic. For the participants here who are willing to enhance their ability on having leadership creativity and teamwork, being able to transformationally inspire other people, have a trustworthy character, and be an effective leader despite the trying times, this second week of webinar series is perfect for you. One of our guest speakers who will be joining us on discussing transformational leadership is known for his work in humanitarian aid. He is the External Vice President at the Republic from San Beda University, Associate Director, Associate External Vice President in Social Sciences and Humanities Association, and and Internal Vice President at Beden Mathematics Circle. He is also known for his positive, resilient, and motivational attitude towards our local and international governance issues. I would like to introduce to you all Mr. Kobe Felicia. Our second guest speaker for the second week seminar is one of the graduates of the strand specialized in digital design and arts from Centro Escolar Integrated School in Menjola, where he also served as the previous student council president. For his 6 years of public service under student council and other school organizations, he is distinguished for his enthusiasm, strong social consciousness, and passionate leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rowan Jason Franco. This will be held Saturday next week, April 17, at exactly 1 p.m. And this is also a free admission, and likewise, throughout the webinar series, all participants who register the Google Forms, which will be placed in the Zoom chat box, will receive an e-certificate. So kindly register, guys, while there are still slots left. So thank you, guys, and see you there.
Ayan, thank you so much, Mr. David Cabaltera. Ayan, dahil nga hashtag we are here for you, we would also like this opportunity to promote our membership applications for the Power Filipino Youth dahil talagang through integrity, service, and leadership ay magpapatuloy ang ating mission to empower the whole Filipino community. As you can see, we are currently growing in numbers, kaya naman don't hesitate to fill out our membership forms together with the next session for our webinar. forms, which will be sent by the technical team through our Zoom and FB live chat box, no? And ayan, no? Applications are now open. And by the end of the session as well, everyone is required to answer the post-webinar evaluation forms provided by the event organizers. This will be the primary basis for our verification of the participants' attendance and e-certificates. As you can see, ayan, yan yung ating sample e-certificates. For the both Zoom and FB Live participants, the technical team will be sending the forms through the chat box. And the post-evaluation forms will be closed 6 hours after the official end of our webinar session. So you can see it through our Zoom and FB live chat box. And at the same time, this will be posted din sa ating FB page for our webinar. Ayan. Okay, now to finally end this webinar session, may we call on the Social Services Director of the Power of Filipino Youth, Mr. Justin Badayos, for his closing remarks.
Ayan, so hello and good afternoon po sa inyong lahat. First and foremost, thank you po sa 700 plus Zoom and Facebook Live participants for joining us on the first series of our ongoing 5-week seminar series. Ms. Myra G. Gahid, our guest speaker, thank you very much for your informative talk and for the experience you have given us this afternoon, which we will undoubtedly apply and learn every day. Despite the fact that we're currently in the grip of a health crisis, remember to take care of yourself as well as the others. You are vital and deserving. Always remember that you are never alone. There will always be people around you who can support you, so don't be afraid. Again, thank you for joining us today for a webinar entitled Taking Care of One's Mental Health and Overall Wellness Amidst the Pandemic, and I hope you all have a good afternoon.
Ayan. Thank you so much, Mr. Justin Badayos, our Social Services Director for the Power Filipino Youth. Again, on behalf of the Power Filipino Youth, the organizing and technical team of this mental health theme webinar, I would like to thank you all for staying with us as we continuously raise awareness regarding the importance of having a conversation with regards to mental health, especially amidst the pandemic. Tandaan natin na there's a huge difference between ikaw and tayo, sabi nga ni Miss Myra Gahid. Ayan. But before we end the session, we encourage all the Zoom participants to open their cameras for the photo opportunity with our guest speaker, Ms. Myra G. Gahid. Ayan, mag-open po tayo ng cameras. Ayan, para makita ang ating mga faces. Ayan, technical team, okay na po ba?
Ayan, okay. I have 2 pages here. So, smile lang po kayo kasi hindi ko po alam kung nasaan kayo. But here we go. 1. For the first page po, smile na. Itodo na natin yung ngiti hanggang tenga. 1, 2, 3, smile. Isa pa po. 1, 2, 3, smile. For the second page naman po, ayan. Smile din po. 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you po.
Ayan, thank you so much, Mr. Yuri. And ayan, before we end our session, thank you so much to all the participants both in Zoom and FB Live. And we are hoping to see you soon in our future webinar sessions and events. Again, I'm Kyril Tolete, your host for today's webinar session, saying that we must continue empowering others. And for that to happen, we also would like to continue to empower ourselves. Again, thank you so much for having our time and stay safe, everyone.